It's left and right.
Split? Oh, okay.
Here I thought that, wow, this is such a great sound because I don't really even hear myself, but they do. Okay, better? All right. So the best part is Full Sail just opened their own virtual production facility. Just really, it's only really been a month we've actually really been using it, I would say. But we have learned quite a bit. And even in that month, if you're familiar with the virtual production landscape, even in that month, that makes this team the top 10% on the planet probably who have virtual production experience, especially the two gentlemen sitting in the middle. So with that, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves because they've been doing it for over a year. Well, at least Brody has. So I'm going to start at the far end. Ann, why don't you let us know who you are, what you do, and just a real brief description of your world when it comes to virtual production. How did you get involved with it?
Absolutely. Okay. Hi, guys. Ann Russell. I am the program director for the Film Production MFA program at Full Sail University. And I am the one that came to Rick last year and said, hey, we need to do a virtual production stage. We need to do this technology. It's huge in my world. It's a game changer, and I really want you to look into this and hopefully make it happen. And of course, Rick, with the magical touch that he has with everything at Full Sail, he made it, our dream, my team's dream, a reality. So we are so appreciative and loving it. And we are already having one production that is a filmmaker from LA coming into town to work on a documentary. We got in yesterday and did our first pre-viz day with the film students, which was a huge learning curve for my team because obviously as filmmakers, we're used to a very different workflow. So that's been just really amazing, and we're just really excited to be able to learn this technology and really help evolve it at Full Sail. So that's my involvement.
And next we have Marcella Wilbeck. She is filling in, but I'm so glad that we were able to have her here because one of our panelists couldn't make it. Marcella?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. Hi. So my background is in the art world. I'm now the technical artist in the virtual production studio on Full Sail campus. So I kind of got into this from the game art side of things, but my intention was mostly to get into the film world. So I'm very excited to be a part of this journey as Full Sail, gets into the world of virtual production. Kind of been there from the ground floor before the screens were even built, actually, helping our technical team back there, Jeremy in the audience there, making sure that the computers are all talking to each other properly, and that we could have something to see once it got turned on. Very important. But yeah, I think that's it.
All right. And next we have Brody Ramsey, and yes, he is my son.
Hey, I'm Brody. I work at View Studios, and I also went to Full Sail for game development. So I come from like a game engine programming world. But I've always had a passion for film. And when Full Sail was discovering virtual production, so was View, and I decided to go over there and check it out. And for a year now, we've been exploring and doing really cool shoots. We've done stuff like Disney, Sony, WWE. I'm sure there's more. But we're also building like a network of studios. So we're trying to grow and build this like community of virtual production network across the entire U.S.
Yeah,
So-
and how many studios has you built so far?
Currently we have 2 open, Tampa and Nashville. We are currently in the progress of opening Vegas. And then we have probably up to 3 more, I would say, coming soon. So,
Including one in Orlando.
Yep.
So we're excited about that. And next we have Drew Smith, also a Full Sail grad.
Yeah, how's it going? My name is Drew Smith. I went to Full Sail as a game art degree and graduated in October 2020. I actually went out of school and was working out of the industry for a little bit while I worked on my portfolio. And my portfolio was the reason that I was actually able to get into virtual production. They saw that I was a game art degree and that I specialize in 3D environments. And they brought me on as, to help with environments and operations of the computer. They saw that I had a very high technical side. And I've been actually only working at View for 3 months now, but I've learned tons in these 3 months, and it's definitely the future for production. So.
And last but not least, Kyle Frazier.
Is that it? That's what I get? Okay.
No, you gotta do the rest.
I gotta do the rest myself. Okay, so hey everyone, I'm Kyle Fraser. I am the new stage manager for Studio V1, as we're calling it, over at Full Sail. A little background on me: I've been a camera op and director of photography since around 2005, 2006. I also graduated from Full Sail, worked locally with companies like Microsoft, Department of Defense, Disney, stuff like that. And I've been teaching at Full Sail for a while, and then I moved over into this new role.
Excellent. So there are, as you're coming in, there are plenty of seats down the front and around here. If some of you want to slide in a little bit, you might find, I know in COVID times that's a weird request to ask, but there might be some more room. So if you will take note that on the far end of the panel we have Ann and we have Kyle. These are both people from the film world. Ann has an extensive background in reality television and producing side. And Kyle, as he's mentioned, doing a lot of commercial work, working for some major companies, including Disney, and still does that every once in a while, right? And in the center, a lot of artists who come from the gaming world, and that's basically what virtual production is made of. In fact, if we go through history, a lot of our new technologies are really the merger of a couple of things. For example, cell phones and laptops give us smartphones. And who would be, dead in the water without their smartphone, right? Or how about when member nations come together to create something as amazing and fantastic as an international space station? Or my favorite, when you have chocolate and peanut butter, right? Giving you the Reese's peanut butter cup, which as of yesterday I saw a commercial, they have now added potato chips into the Reese's peanut butter cup.
I am all for that.
Yeah, I have not tried that yet, but I am all for it.
I'm supportive.
So represented here, I've asked a group that represent both the film and the gaming worlds, because this is what that merger has created, and that is virtual production. Now, I'm sure you wouldn't be here today if you weren't somewhat familiar with virtual production, and that probably comes from a show like Mandalorian, where they've done extensive background documentaries on how virtual production works. But you're probably not aware there's a lot of TV shows now that you watch that are also produced virtually, and one is Star Trek Discovery. How many techies or Trekkies are there out there? Anybody? All right, I myself am one. And William Shatner is also part of this film festival, so if you're not a Trekkie, you might want to consider it, at least for the time that he's going to be here. And then one of our own grads, who is vice president at HBO, is the senior producer for House of the Dragon, which will be airing this summer. And that is also a virtual production. And Brody and I were able to visit when Game of Thrones was hot and heavy. We were able to actually visit Ireland and go through the massive sets, and we trekked all over Ireland from one set to another. Almost all of House of the Dragon is shot on a virtual stage, except for exterior shots where they would go possibly to a location, but most of it is all done on a virtual stage. So before we get into asking the panelists questions, we'll have plenty of time for you to ask the panelists. I thought it might be helpful for us to give you a basic understanding of how it works. So forgive me if you come from this world, but we are finding there's not a lot of people with experience. And so we find it helpful to give everybody kind of a background on how this merger of technologies works. And before I do that, one of the things I want to really express is that merger is still happening. The systems that we use were never really designed to do what we do right now. And we're just finally seeing, Epic has released Unreal 5 this week, which really does help with virtual production, but our tracking systems have not updated to use that. So we're all kind of, hurry up, let's get this going. So there's a lot of still new things happening out there. So imagine with me, if you will, you are driving along the countryside, and I have to thank Kyle for this beautiful landscape. As you look out the window, you'll notice everything close to you moves really fast, and everything in the distance moves really slow. This is a phenomenon known to us in our 3D world as parallaxing. And it happens that when you take a camera and you try to put that on a video screen, because a lot of people get this idea that virtual production is just using a big video screen. It is way more than that. Because a video screen is a flat image. So if I put a video camera just on a video screen, this is what I'm gonna get. I'm just gonna get a flat image, no parallaxing whatsoever. But if I can track that camera, relay those coordinates into whatever's creating my environment and push that image back out, then I can create parallaxing. And that's the essence of virtual production, where we track camera movements, they go into a game engine, the game engine houses the environment that we want the camera to look at and spits out in what we call a frustum to show us exactly how that world should look if it were three-dimensional, right? And that's what gives us some of the amazing moments that are virtual production and that are believable. What you're seeing right here, if we can do a little bit of volume. No worries. Oh, all right, no worries, you don't need it. Are you muted here? Yeah, don't worry about it, okay. It's just background music. This is an example, this is our studio at Full Sail University. These were some test runs we were doing with a Victorian set. That's what the camera sees. And then the shot before that was this one here. That's the frustum, which is the high resolution area that the camera is actually looking at. And that is the output. I'm ringing a little bit, so you can bring me down. And we did some tests with dance videos. Then one of the highlights that we had last month was we were able to shoot a feature film with William Forsythe and Michael Pare, which we are super excited about. We did a process scene in that movie where Kyle went out and shot some footage with cameras mounted to a car. There's William Forsythe there. This house was designed completely by game art students and faculty at Full Sail University. And so we're super excited about the possibilities. And we actually, I think our mantra right now is we pulled it off. Right? We actually did it. We did a feature film, 100% virtual, and we pulled it off. And then I wanted to show you some of, Brody sent us this video. This is some of the work that View, and I apologize I don't have the audio, but this is some of the work that View has done. And Brody, you know, I hate to steal your thunder, you've been there for a little over a year. You've worked on almost all of these projects.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So from the Tampa Bay Rays to stuff for Apple TV, there was a scene from C that was shot with Batista, to stuff with WWE, national car commercials. They just did a shoot for Amazon not too long ago, which won't be on this because this is an older reel. And then one of the exciting things for me, there's WWE, that's Brody's work there, is this one coming up, which is 21 Pilots music video that View did, which was also nominated for a VMA this past year. So yeah, that's super exciting. And that is View's maybe not even a year into having their volume when they did the 21 Pilots video.
We just hit a year, like a couple months ago.
So super, super exciting stuff. And congratulations to you guys for doing that. And Drew, you have an amazing future ahead of you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the first thing I want to ask the panelists, and I think I want to start right in the center with Brody, because you have literally the most experience of the panel in shooting. What do you think has been the hardest part of that learning curve when it comes to virtual production? A director walks into your studio and what's hard for them to understand?
I could write, honestly, a book on a lot of the stuff. The biggest thing is just it's a new mindset in general for people to think on. The biggest thing is a director likes to sit there behind or in front of the camera and try to direct everything as if it's a stage production, and you got to look in camera. Everything you're looking at and everything you're doing is in camera. If you start looking out, it gets very wonky. Perspectives are off because your camera's not in the right position, stuff like that. And then coloring, directors get really picky about coloring, and lighting with the volume is a whole thing. I could go into super technical detail, but there's an art to learning how to color with the volume. It is a good lighting tool, but really good reflection tool. That's the big thing that virtual production sells is I mean, if you watch Mandalorian, the Mandalorian armor is fully reflective, and the LED sells that. Now you don't have a green screen reflection. You can have all these real-time reflections that move with him. So stuff like that is really important and hard for people to wrap their head around. So.
And Kyle, what do you feel is the benefit with a university hosting an actual virtual production studio?
The plus right now is that everyone is clamoring to get to this tech. As Birdie was talking about, they have 2 active right now. They have like 5 more in the works. More and more companies are seeing the advantage of this and having it at a university where our students can not only get hands-on experience, but get those moments where they get to graduate with a credit on a feature-length film that was shot completely virtual, credits on commercials and other projects that have come through, and even in the near future, our students will have scenes in their own short films that will be shot on the virtual stage. So having that experience coming out to a world that is severely understaffed right now is just going to be a huge benefit to the students.
Drew, Anne, did you have something on that?
I just wanted to add that I really can't stress enough what Brody was saying, because the students our workflow in the film world is so linear, and what Brody is talking about, that all of the previs, all of the stuff that we would normally be doing in the post, instead of being after production, now happens before production. And so the fact that we're able to teach our students this other workflow so that they're understanding both is going to make such a difference when they get out there, because I agree with what Brody's saying, and I've seen it in just my limited time in the virtual production soundstage, that filmmakers just aren't used to, they're looking at it and they're seeing one thing and it's just not making sense, and they don't understand even the process enough, so that there's such a learning curve to teaching filmmakers how to use the technology, that to be able to give the students the advantage of the heads up of knowing that system before they even step foot out in the industry is you can't really, undervalue that.
Do you feel that we, as educators, have to sort of curb our teaching, or when it comes to film production, or do we teach film production as a traditional thing and then add on the virtual side to it? Because the structure is very different.
Yeah, I think, back in the day when those of us who have been out in the industry for a while, had to learn on like flatbeds and like with emulsion film, and Jenny shaking her head, she knows, like you almost, in order to understand the jargon of the technology when you get into like an editing system, and the reason why we have terminology like bins or like sequences, like it comes from that time when we were in the emulsion world. So I feel like we're still having to teach that for them to understand the process, but there's such a shift for filmmakers going into virtual production that our due diligence is to really be teaching future filmmakers how to use this so that they aren't hindered when they get out there. But they're going to have to still know the traditional linear system.
So Kyle, when you first started at Full Sail, I believe we were using film.
Yeah, so when I was started at Full Sail, we were still all film. We had 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter. And as I was finishing, I was the second class through the bachelor's, and they just added the HD stage. Back then, there was this new thing called the Panasonic DVX, which allowed people at home to be able to shoot 24p on digital. And this changeover is very much similar to the change from film to digital when that happened, in that it's going to revolutionize everything we're doing. But so many of these old techniques and old philosophies and workflows and standards still ring true and are still very, very important. But it's now just, you have to learn how to communicate with these guys and bring them into our world, and us find a way into their world. It's something that came up quite a bit on the feature was color. Because your cameras shoot your standard white balance temperatures, but then you have to worry about the screen white balance temperatures, the temperature of the lights in the environment, the way it's rendering on the computer screen. It's a huge rabbit hole of just color. And so being able to get on the same page and discuss that with your art team, and discuss it with your camera team, and make sure that everyone understands where that color workflow is super important. And you can't do that again without the old knowledge, because if you go back all the way to film, you bought film in 3200, or you bought film for daylight. And so we're still in that world. We're still there. And it's because everything grows on what came before. So you need that previous knowledge to be able to get to the next step.
So with that being said, Drew, you're fairly new to the virtual production world, but you know, you're a game artist, you've been schooled in that. What was it like for you kind of coming from the background you know and then putting it into a totally different application?
Well, I'll definitely say it was interesting. I basically came with very little film knowledge whatsoever. My extent to my film knowledge was actually filming mock trials. So I would set up the cameras and, you know, all the microphone equipment and whatnot. And they thought that was pretty interesting because most people that, you know, do game art, that's what they do, you know. But I was about all kind of technical things. And that's kind of what an Unreal operator has to know is like you need to know every little technical problem that you could come about. A lot of our job is troubleshooting. So just being able to like knowing my artistic side is really important because, you know, I help make some of the environments. Like I help make an environment for Amazon. I've been making some of our environments for NAB. It's, you know, that's my focus, but a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis is, you know, trying to figure out, well, why did I lose my static IP? Why isn't Moses connecting? There's a lot more that goes into it than just, you know, just film or just art. And so kind of being able to be a jack of all trades, I guess, has been kind of my why I've been able to get into the industry and tackle it properly.
I think, you know, your phrase, jack of all trades, is definitely descriptive of the process. But and I don't know any of the panelists can answer this. From my limited experience, I'm finding that we still really, more than ever, we almost have to rely on each other's skill sets because no one has the lifespan to absorb all the technology and make it all work. Like no one's going to be a stellar DP and a stellar artist together, but they do have to come to an understanding of each other's disciplines.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
In order for those things to work.
Yeah.
Marcella, how was that transition for you? Because you've had quite a journey. You were a tour guide. You studied in the game art school. You became a teacher, and then, you sat as we literally finished turning the lights on the studio and started working with getting the systems up and running, and now you're managing the whole IT and environment side. What was that like for you?
I would also mirror that it's been a very interesting journey for sure. And I think one of the biggest, the most exciting part of it is what you're talking about, is getting to learn from everyone around us. It is definitely a team type of environment. So I've learned a lot from the IT side of how everything's connecting and communicating, and making sure that things aren't trying to troubleshoot and figure out where the source of the problem is, because there's daisy chains of daisy chains of daisy chains of how all this is working. So it's been like a huge learning experience, and I've always kind of joked that I wanted to be a permanent student, and that's essentially this role.
That's very well said. I want to just, and please forgive me if I'm talking beneath the audience's level of understanding. I just want to make sure, because sometimes there are terms that come out that we banter around all the time that aren't normal nomenclature for film, even aficionados. So environments basically are the scenes that are created in the game engine. Well, they're not really created in the game engine. They're created with modeling, usually through software like Maya. There's another one that you guys use a lot. Do you remember, besides Maya?
So we use Cinema 4D.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things are modeled with an artist, and then, which probably Drew is something that you do, and then brought into the game engine. And the game engine, Unreal is the most prevalent when it comes to virtual production. Disney, of course, has struck out and created its own, which we will probably never get a chance to use. But what they have done is they've interfaced all these different systems. When Marcella says you have to understand Is it Moses not communicating? Is it the game engine? Is it in display, which is the display system that we're trying to tell the game engine, put it on this thing, right? Because it's used to being, game engine technology was designed for people to immerse themselves in a world that is only visible by where their joystick takes them. But there's a whole world around them, and it just has to exist. Virtual production is similar to that, but what we're learning is when a gaming artist tries to create a virtual production world, we have to limit it to the display we're actually using. Because if we make the whole world, yesterday we ran into this because the artist made a whole water world for a documentary that Anne is working on, and we don't need to see the whole world. So it's rendering and killing our frame rates because it's rendering an entire water planet. And when we put our display screen into Unreal to show us how big this is, the display screen was this big in the middle of an ocean. So I'm saying all that to say there's so much sort of patchwork to the technology right now that we're still working on. And Unreal 5 just came out, so there's a lot of new things. And so I wanted to ask, what do you think, Marcella, what do you think would be the best improvements for game engine technology to make virtual production a lot smoother on your side?
That's an excellent question. Honestly, I think we've all been kind of putting a lot of hopes into Unreal 5 as a big part of the hindrances during the production is lighting, and making those lighting changes in real time takes a little bit of time. It's not quite real time. Sometimes it takes time to actually what we call bake the lighting so that the lighting looks more realistic. So having Unreal 5's real-time lighting is going to be a huge game changer when we get into that. But I'd also be curious to hear what Brody and our friends over here
Yes,
want to.
absolutely.
I think the biggest thing is previs for this in general, but the biggest thing I think we need is a tool for directors and anyone involved in the creative to be able to pitch and show their project and almost like do a virtual pre-light. I think would be the best thing. So that way when you do everything in the computer and then you come in set, you have your actor walk on set, you push a button and everything just works. That is ideally how things should go, but instead we're spending hours and hours figuring things out on set. It's the first time we're seeing the environment. It's the first time we're seeing the camera position, and that just sets us back so much every time. When I feel like you just have it all set up, laid out, ready to go, a virtual storyboard in a game engine, and then just press play would be the best thing.
So I think, Kyle, if you could respond with what, from the filmmaker side, what is it that filmmakers really need from the director or especially like the DP? You've sat behind the artist station, but you've also gone up on into the volume and shot. And something that Brody mentioned, is looking at your shots. Like, how important is that? Because before we would just get storyboards, and now we kind of need more.
Right.
And what is the more that we need?
So I think that in the future, a DP is going to be very much able to work cameras in the real and the fake world, because for what he was saying, like me as a DP, I want to go in knowing what I'm getting. And if I'm just looking at a storyboard and all I see is that they want a medium shot, where's that medium shot taking place? What's behind it? What's a virtual environment? What's a real environment item? Like all of these things. So to be able to sit down either in Unreal or a standalone program, or some people are doing it in VR, and to pick my shots and to say, this is where it's going to be, have a little meta-human that I can drop in, and that's the person that I can say I want, nice soft lighting on this side, we're going to use some negative fill on this side, and we're going to dolly from left to right. To be able to see that in the virtual world before you arrive on set is going to be vastly important, because like Brody was saying, when you get on set and you look at this screen, it doesn't look like anything like what you're going to end up with. In the video, you saw the Victorian scene, and they show what it looks like as we're moving the camera, and everything is out of perspective. It's all wonky, but then they show the camera, what comes out of camera, and it looks how it's supposed to look. Yeah. And getting your brain wrapped around that what you're looking at is not what you're getting unless you're looking through the camera is not easy. And it can cause a lot of frustration for the director, a lot of frustration for the DP, because in the standard world, I walk onto set, I can look around, I can shoot anywhere I want to shoot. But if we need to shoot behind me on the virtual set, we got to spin the whole set, we might find out that there was an issue with the direction the flooring was made or things like that. So for the filmmaker side, if nothing else, there's on Unreal, there's a bunch of free tutorials that teach you how to do all of this stuff. And there's a whole section just on virtual production. Go through that, go through learning how to manipulate a camera. You don't need to be able to build the worlds, but you should know how to fly around them and how to look at different things so you can properly communicate with these guys, because without that communication, you're going to be dead in the water.
I have to interrupt to bring you an important announcement. Someone with an Audi or a Nissan says cars need to move your cars. So if you have an Audi or a Nissan and you didn't park actually in the parking lot, you might need to just briefly go up and move your cars. Okay? So if you have to do that, go ahead. No one's watching.
We're not judging. We're not judging.
No one's judging at all. We've all been there. So I think that one of the other things that you have on the panel today is you really do have two sides of virtual production. One is commercial side, which View Technologies is probably the biggest part of their bread and butter, and then you have the filmmaker side, which is more of what Kyle and Ann and Marcella have experience in doing. Brody and Drew, tell us a little bit from the commercial side. What is that like? Like, you know, for filmmakers, we all do commercial work to kind of make the bread and butter, but we really want to be doing is making movies. So when a commercial company comes in and wants to shoot on your volume, what is your expectation of them? Like, what do they need to bring to you to be able to use your facility effectively and with as little frustration as possible?
I almost pitch their creative back to them. I feel like is the best way to do it. I communicate with them, what do they want? And then I take that info and I bring it back. I'm like, okay, then here's what I can do. And then with that, it's like a back and forth conversation of educating them and then them coming back to me and like, well, this is what we want to do. And it's always trying to push boundaries, but the biggest thing is just understanding, trying to know like, if you need this, this is what I need from you in order to get that to happen. And it's very different per project. But like with WWE, we had to do, I think it was 50 wrestlers in like 2 days, and each one had their own environment. And I had to line those all up, get them all ready. I was like, I need a strict schedule of everything we're doing, line by line. And even so, they completely broke it. Like by the first person walking on set, it was out of the water. So like just learning that and earning that respect from people of like how difficult it is to be thrown curveballs, but also to be ready for all those curveballs is the biggest communication issue, I think, in general.
Yeah, Andy, do you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, it's like they don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And it's like what I think you're kind of getting at is it's almost like we need a system whereby they're doing remote building of those assets, like, you know, so that they're not spending the time in the stage itself, which is very costly. It's like that's where the learning curve shouldn't be. It should be pre that. But in order for it to be done beforehand, all the people, the art director, the production designer, the cinematographer, the director, they all have to get into the world and actually deal with these issues. So,
also, just from my experience doing both films and commercials, the timeline, the scheduling timeline is different.
yeah.
You know, a commercial will normally take a month or two to plan, and that's like a big national spot. A lot of times people just knock on your door, hey, I'd like to shoot a commercial next week. You know, I mean, we just had a company come in and talk about next month doing a piece. With films, we worked on that film for 8-9 months in creating all the environments. I say we, I didn't do that. They did that. But, so we took all that time, and there was a lot of back and forth with the director. And then one of the things I've never experienced before was the director went down to Goodwill and bought a bunch of like set dressings, little flower pots and picture frames and all this stuff. And it was loaded into my office and I'm like, why do I have all this? And it all had to be handed to Marcella and converted into digital so that if we shot and we weren't using real furnishings, it still had to be in the set, you know? And so Marcella, you were part of that process like all the way in the beginning. We actually made you the art director because we needed someone to have a single eye on that. So tell us a little bit about the film side and the preparation for getting a script ready for virtual production.
Yeah, that's a lot. And also, I just want to point out, too, that I'm also fairly new to the film side of things. So it was a learning experience understanding what is typically expected out of looking through a script and figuring out what the props might be. So I spent some time looking through the script and trying to analyze which types of props are going to be physical and only need to be physical, and which ones also need to have a digital replication. And then translating that to my artist team and getting them the proper reference photos and scale and things of that nature. There were times we didn't have the scale proper. We just had a single photo, and when we put it into the environment, it was much too large or much too small when we saw the actual item in there. So it was a little bit of like back and forth of like really didn't see what it really looked like until we put the set up together in the soundstage and seeing it on there. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
And I would say too, just to add to that, there's a lot of, Kyle had mentioned this before, you have to plan for the back and forth between the film team and the artist team. Because if you don't plan for that back and forth, you're gonna find yourself on set going, I didn't ask for that wall to be blue, or I didn't ask for that coffee maker, it should be a different coffee maker, that actually happened. So you really have to plan for that. I think we would have alleviated a lot of frustrations had we learned this a week into the movie, that we had to have meetings for the next day, or every time we were gonna change the set, we had to meet with the director and review those changes, because what she was expecting may not be what we could deliver. So that kind of goes back to what Brody said, what do you want? And here's what I can give you. Once we got into that groove, the production went very smoothly. And I have to say, I'm super proud of the team because it was a 3-week shoot for a feature film, 90-something pages. And by the time we got through the first week and a half or halfway point, we were ahead of schedule. Like we ended every day ahead of schedule. And then we were even able to go back and shoot something we shot the first week after learning all this stuff, going, yeah, we want to redo that because that's not going to be as good as everything else we've already done. And so that, you don't get that on commercial shoots. And I kind of want to bring that up because a lot of us who are filmmakers will always have one foot in commercial shooting because it's kind of the way we fund what we love to do more. And so virtual production is being embraced by both the commercial side and by the actual filmmaking side. But I will say, in my experience right now, and mostly vicariously through Brody, most of it has been commercial. Only major networks have embraced virtual for series because it's very economical for them. And COVID has kind of promoted that, of course, Mandalorian being the big purveyor of this technology. We're going to come to a point in the next few minutes where we're going to ask you guys if you have any questions for the panel. But before we do that, I just want to offer to the panel, you don't have to answer this question because I myself, it's so new to most of us. But what's been your most inspiring, challenging, like you got done with something and you're like, I can't believe we did that, but we did it, moment in your experience with virtual production? I'm going to start actually with Brody because he's had more moments than anybody else.
So with commercials, there's a lot of quick turnarounds. So I think one of the biggest things starting off was we built the volume. We actually booked a shoot with Mercedes, and we had to build the volume before Mercedes could come in. So we got that done, and then that's when we were like realized like, okay, this is actually possible. Not even a month later, Today's Show comes in, interviews us, and does a piece on us. The next week, Disney comes in, and then not even as we're cleaning up for Disney, 21 Pilots comes in, and that turnaround of like, we actually just did that in less than 3 weeks. Like that was the moment of like, how did we do that so quickly? And with like, we were only doing this for a few months, and that to me was like the moment of like, this is how fast this industry can move. It probably shouldn't, but that was an eye-opening experience to me of like, we could really ramp this up if we can make this really good. So.
Well, I know I'm going to embarrass you, but I don't mean to. But, Brody's degree was in game development, so he has a strong familiarity with Unreal. And we were in the middle of looking at building our own studio at Full Sail, so I went to view it, and they had a wonderful internship program. And they were really just starting themselves. So I told Brody, you need to get your ass out there and apply to their internship. And he didn't even finish the internship because that need for an Unreal artist was so necessary. I know a local studio that's a major player in the film industry did their opening and didn't have an Unreal artist. And a lot of people felt that they should have delayed their opening. And I can say that artist is critical to what we do. But Brody's experience from when he started working at View, it was within a month or two that he was doing 21 Pilots. And then a few months after that, the same video was nominated for BMA. So super proud of that. But it does illustrate how quickly, as Brody mentioned, this technology moves. And when you get embraced in it, I told Full Sail, if the traditional Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And sure enough, once we built it, Kyle's inbox has been just flooded from commercial shooters to feature films. We're shooting a Space Pups insert for a feature film next week. Anne's documentary on is coming up in the same week as that. And so it's just been a whirlwind. And then Brody's experience with building, studios all over. We actually talked to a grad that View is building a studio out in Austin, Texas, and partnering with them. So it's an amazing technology, but it's just growing. And I think from an educator standpoint, the thing that really thrills me is people like Brody, Drew, Marcella are really needed in the industry, like desperately needed. And so it's just an exciting time for you guys, but also a frustrating time. I want to turn over to Kyle. We've been doing this together for just a few short months. But what do you feel was your most successful moment over the past couple months?
That's a very hard question. So to give you guys kind of a timeline of our world, I started after Marcella, but realistically, we turned the screen on in early January, and we didn't have it working with Unreal. It wasn't working with the camera tracker. Basically, it was a giant LED TV. And from there to end of February, we had 2 shoots under our belt for our PR campaign. Some of the footage you looked up there. We had another set that we built and set up for ribbon cutting, and then literally 2 days later, we started shooting a feature. I'm still not caught up on sleep yet, but the thing that is kind of most exciting and the most memorable for me is going to be the stuff that we've accomplished with each other, with Jeremy, with Marcella, with Rick, with everyone at the school supporting us. Like, to see everyone come together to make that happen, like, it really shouldn't have worked. It just shouldn't have. And we get to look back on that and say we did it, and that's great.
I share that feeling with you. It's a really good feeling. I also want to give a shout out to Jeremy, who's sitting all the way in the back there. He's our IT guy. It's the only phrase every time I look at him is godsend. This guy is an absolute godsend. And I've said it before, you absolutely have to have the game artist, you absolutely have to have the DP, and you absolutely have to have an IT person to really make everything work. He's the guy we call when something's not working and we can't figure it out with our brains. Jeremy, hey, it's not working, So It's been great. And the really cool thing is I watch him look over their shoulders and learn at the same time. So it's really interesting. I do the same thing. I know Marcella's tired of me peering into the frame rates. Why is that so low? But it's really been an absolutely exciting thing. What I want to do is kind of open it up to questions. Is that okay for you guys?
Yeah.
So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll do my best to pinpoint you. The room, this is a beautiful room, by the way, yes? Yeah, just thank you so much for the Film Festival for getting it for us and the Winter Park for building the facility. Absolutely gorgeous. Yes, right there in the middle, Jackie.
Hi.
Hi. What's your question?
I'm curious more about jobs in this field because it sounds like you're kind of giving us a little preview that it's like you need your IT people, you need your artists, you need your DP. So could you give us any glimpse into where are the job demands right now in this field and what are the skill sets that companies are looking for?
I would say those are the main three. Someone very technical, someone very technical but well versed on set, almost like a DIT kind of, but like virtual production DIT, and then someone who's good at game art. That person needs to make assets on the fly. There's always a director who's like, I want a car right here. It's like, you didn't ask for a car, and we already have the actor on set, so we got to make it quick. So stuff like that is definitely really important, and I do think there's a learning curve for DPs, and for DPs to have that experience under their belt, that is like a title in itself. I feel like to be able to say I've shot in a virtual volume as a DP, or even like an art director. Like I feel like art people love virtual production because it's so heavy art. The art department like can build an entire world within the volume. Those things are super important. But to talk about these new jobs, it's those main three.
I think if I could add to that, I would say if you put any of those at the most needed right now would be the artist.
Yeah.
A DP has a learning curve, but it's usually from their base knowledge. Then as Kyle mentioned earlier, if they can understand light and color, they just need a few shoots under their belt to kind of get it to where they need to be. And then the DP brings so much to the artist, things the artist never would conceive of. Like they don't think about focal lengths and frame rates and color correction. They don't think about those things, which a DP really would help. And because all the systems are patchwork, that's where your IT person comes in. They have the ability to think, what is this machine saying to that software in the technology? But from my position as an educator, the call I get the most for is the artist. Absolutely. And what Full Sail is trying to do is to really right now give students just experience. Like we have degrees in the works, but what we do now every time we host a shoot is we ask for students to come and help, and we make sure they get a single line credit that says virtual something on there so that they can put that on their resume, because I can tell you right now that is gold in the industry. It's just to have any kind of virtual experience whatsoever. Even as a writer, we actually have
What do you mean by an artist?
an artist.
You mean a person can program the screen to illustrate a boat? Is that what you mean by an artist?
There are two types. There are modelers who would create that boat, and then there are environment artists, which environment artists are probably the ones that are probably the most in demand, because we've had modelers since, we still use them in the film world all the time. But the game artist is the one that manages the environment mostly. And
So that created on the computer.
they actually will take an environment that a modeler has created and then tweak it for virtual. So when you create almost, they are different. Like Brody was a programmer, right?
I can't 3D model for my life.
Yeah.
And I can't program, so.
But Drew can model.
So they go together.
They
Yeah.
do. They do. But in the film world, you can buy environments for next to nothing. Like the Victorian mansion that was on there, I think it cost us $80. And you're only seeing one room in a mansion of 50 rooms and gardens outside, that we could shoot any of those things. But we bought that, and then we gave it to Marcella to get it ready for virtual production, because it wasn't designed for virtual production. It was designed to be in a game, right? So your artist is going to be that person. I don't know who the modeler was, right? Big production houses like ILM will have modelers and artists, but I'm finding that a lot of the film houses that have virtual studios really are clamoring for artists right now, or people like Brody who understand Unreal enough to become an artist, right?
Yeah, I would just like to add that to help you understand the 3D artist, I think you could kind of think of it as like a virtual sculpting, like digital clay that you're making 3D assets with, in a sense.
With polygons.
With polygons,
Yeah.
yes,
So
yes.
I've been to the WeTo workshop in New Zealand, in Wellington, where, all of the, all of the big James Cameron films. blah,
Nice,
blah, blah.
yeah.
And they have a huge studio, obviously, and a lot of tiny little models of things, like the entire city of Cleveland or something, let's say, are all models. And then things are set up so that they can, film it all different ways, and, but this is an actual model, or, that they then will project from. They'll film that, and then they'll digitize it, etc. So it just sounds like, I'm just trying to understand, it sounds like what you're saying is that without any beginning point in an organic reality, without the actual model to film and then digitize, your modelers and your quote artists are sitting at a computer and buying a program or creating one, and it is all done digitally. It never exists in the real world. That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
understand.
Correct.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely correct. And I will say, one of the things I'm really proud of with my team is that feature film. When that came to us, I made the producer sign off on it being 100% virtual. Like, there is nothing in that movie, no sets that are real. Unless the actor touches it,
Yeah.
sits on it, it's not real.
And what is the name of
The name of the movie is gonna be Nine Windows.
Oh, okay.
It's a modern rendition of Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock. It's the same basic premise, but the woman who is confined to a wheelchair is a cybersecurity person and is looking through all these different social media windows. And then someone hacks the system and starts murdering people. And she's trying to figure out what is actually going on. So it's a really great, when it comes out, probably this fall, I would think. It's definitely one to watch, I think.
I do want to say, though, that one person on my team, Rob Sloan, who is really big in this world, he has been mapping an entire city using drone and camera footage, and he is literally laying out an entire town that exists in the real world, every street, every angle, putting that 3D world into the game engine to create basically real environments that people can then, and I do think that's a future of what we're going to see,
Correct.
is that people are going to start mapping 3D real existing places and then bringing those into the game engine as a real world. And then in that way you have the flexibility of shooting on location or coming into the virtual production space and shooting it as well. And I think that there's a lot of money and jobs opportunities going to be in that area.
I was actually going to bring that up too. I cannot emphasize that enough. I feel like photogrammetry and LiDAR for 3D artists is dramatically the way to go.
Correct.
And if you could have a virtual library of all these sets, you now have, like, I have a grocery store whenever you want. I can remodel to be Publix or Walmart, whatever you want, but I have the entire asset ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still start with shooting like a regular
You could do
You
either.
can, yeah.
Yeah.
in the actual 3D world, which
Yeah.
I think is a huge richness, because I think this being two-dimensional, you really lose a lot if that's when you begin. That's just my thought.
Correct.
I think it's, I hear what you're saying, I agree with you. I think, though, this world isn't, the 3D world in the game engine is three-dimensional. And that's what makes it realistic to the camera. And Jen, before I get to you, Brody, I don't know if you want to share, but in Vegas, we have the National Association of Broadcasters convention coming up next week. And View has a display there where they are using a motorcycle tied into the game engine. And elaborate a little bit on that, because that's kind of that technology,
We're
right?
calling it the Unreal Ride. You basically hop on this motorcycle. and then there's an LED wall behind you, and it has a moving track virtually. So from the camera perspective, it looks like you're moving down this street or desert or forest, and you can pick whatever you want. And then we have a robotic camera that'll do the move, and then lights, sound. So it's a very full immersive experience. And then you walk off, and then you scan a QR code, and you have the video on your phone, already edited, ready to go.
And it's the motorcycle's interfaced with the game engine, right?
It'll the lights will change and stuff, but we don't have any movement or anything now.
It'll just be in camera.
So the future would be to have that interface, so that if the actor was driving, the game engine would keep up the environment like they were inside of a game. Yeah. That is definitely the future.
We did do a shoot with a treadmill where the treadmill was interacting with the environment based off her speed and incline, and the treadmill and the environment would react to each other. So there's a lot of potential for stuff like that.
Jen here.
So I just had a question for if there are any students who don't really consider themselves very technically inclined, they consider themselves more creatives, more in the storytelling aspect. What opportunities are there for them either on the virtual production stage, or even if they consider themselves writers, what kind of projects could they create that could take advantage of virtual production?
If the panel doesn't mind, I would like to answer that because that's me. So editor is what I do, so that people would see that as a very technical person. But there are many times I'll knock on someone like Kyle's door and say, I have a problem with this effect. The biggest thing that you can contribute as a storyteller is we have this uncanny ability to see how things connect. So I can say, and I am going to say it with confidence, I could say that I have stood behind the artist station and watched them scratch their heads, and I would say, but what if this? And then, oh yeah, that might actually work. And a lot of times it does work. I think filmmakers, storytellers have the ability to see life as a whole and how it all interacts, and that's the essence of stories. You just have to turn that into looking with those pair of glasses into the technical world. Right now it's a great time because you're looking at different technologies trying to interface, so everyone's going to scratch their head when they have a problem. Because no one has the whole answer. I mean, Marcella has to go to Jeremy has to go to Kyle, Kyle would have to go to Ace, and one of our other guys. So I think really for filmmakers, my advice would be don't be afraid of it. Get into a studio, stand behind the artist station, watch what's going on the stage, take what you know, what you've learned from your studies, and then start putting pieces together. And don't be afraid to voice. From my experience, I'm wondering if this might not be a better idea. Yesterday we were working on a scene trying to figure out how to put a moon in something that would not accept the moon for some reason. And it didn't work, but I said, what about a round light card? Because I've seen them do light cards. Could I do it? No, there's no way I could do it. But that's something that would be a solution, right? And then when we talked about the size of the planet and the frame rates were down, I said, could it possibly be the fact we're rendering light across an entire planet instead of just this? But I learned that from them, and that's me observing my world and trying to understand it better. And I think that's what filmmakers do best. That's why their stories are so rich. And that's why writers' stories are so rich, because they really understand the questions that a lot of us don't even know are supposed to be questions.
And I would say ultimately, storytellers, visual storytellers, that will never change. And the need for stories, good stories, and interesting stories with interesting locations, what virtual production does is really removes that hindrance of being able to, have the budget of Game of Thrones and shoot in Iceland and Ireland and all these places around the world. It's like, it's so self-contained. So, if you can dream it and write that story and make that story, then, it can be done in the virtual production stage. At least a lot of it can,
Yeah,
so.
I agree. My biggest advice is don't be afraid of it. Just because you don't know it, don't be afraid of it.
Can you cut from real to virtual and have it be as seamless as nobody can tell if they're watching it on the big screen?
I'll let you know when we actually do it, but
I mean, Mandalorian did.
yeah, Mandalorian does it. And we were very meticulous with making sure that we could cut stuff. There are some hazards though when you're working with a gaming environment or you're working with an environment, you really, that processing speed, that power that you need to make the environment look real is critical. And it could be disrupted from a number of things.
Yeah.
And then trying to root that down. For me, it's easier as an editor to go, yeah, I see some artifacting up there, but I can actually fix that in post, so let's keep moving. And the director hates that because they're looking at this window and it's got all these little dancing lights on it, it's not supposed to be there. But I'm looking at it going, I can just cut that out of the game engine and slap it in there and post and fix it. So I think, to answer your question, yeah, absolutely. You'll get to a point where you can't really tell the difference. I'm interested in this edit to see if that's gonna hold true for us. But everything we saw through the camera, I have to say, 80% of it looked like I couldn't tell the difference. And there were times where we were like, why is that chair? Oh, that's a real chair. That's not a real chair. I don't like, yeah, it gets a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah, so we had a basement in this feature that we just shot, and we had a staircase, but that was the only real item, right? And we had a staircase that was already built, distressed, and looked right. So our wonderful modeling team went through and measured every plank, every rise, run, the colors, everything, and built a fake one. And there were days where you would walk in, look at the monitor, and you could not tell if we'd brought in the real staircase or we were using the virtual staircase. And the same goes with, we have a shot that is at the bottom of the staircase looking up, and we shot into our roof panel, and it looked like there was a door going straight up and down behind our talent, where it's a flat wall like this. And to be able to do that and to have it be photorealistic is just insane. When you can go, I have an entire basement, and in 30 minutes when we turn over, it's going to be someone's living room. Is just, it's uncanny. It's crazy that you can work this way.
Yeah.
It's like watching a magician reveal the secret and it doesn't disappoint you. It's like, it's even better now that you know how it works. And it's super exciting. When we did that door shot, it was funny because the director wanted to shoot up the staircase with a door. And I'm like, we have a door in the game engine environment, but we don't have a door at the top of this staircase. It's a light panel. And we were at the end, and I'll be totally honest, I was like frustrated. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Let's try it and see if it'll work. And lo and behold, it actually worked. And I was the first one to go, I would have never thought that we could do something like that. And to this day, I mean, Bernie and I go back and forth because View does some amazing things. So I send him a pic, like, guess what we did today? And of course he'll send me something and go, yeah, but have you ever tried this? And so I think the foundation of that back and forth is the realism. Like, how real does that really look to you? And there are some exciting moments when you strive to get that realism out of a virtual studio. Yes?
In the essence of collaboration and to see the amazing growth that's happening with virtual production here, especially in our state, and you also mentioned earlier, resources that you have as far as time and maybe offsetting that, and also talking about, I think, the Broadcasters Association. Does your facility have an LTN connection where you're able to tap into other production outlets across the globe to be able to seamlessly save time even further and compound upon your imaginative creativity?
Brody has to answer that because View is the only facility I know of set up for that future.
Yeah, so you're kind of ahead of what we're trying to do, but that is the end goal. We want to virtualize virtual production to where you could be in a room and run 5 studios from one location.
Remote collaboration is a huge thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Unreal is talking about it. Like, and especially during COVID when everybody was remote, it was like you want to be able to get your filmmakers in. You want to be able to have them be in one country and working in a virtual space in a different country. It's like, it's
We're foundationally still trying to get there, but
Yeah.
like literally, I think a couple weeks ago, I was working on Disney with these guys in Tampa, and then we're doing a shoot for a car commercial in Nashville, and I'm literally remoting into that computer doing that back and forth at the same time. So there's a process there, but yes, that would be the end goal. It's just a little messy right now.
Well, I think too that I know one time one of the View does a lot of research and development, but one of the things, and you can fill in the blanks, was you had some talent remote
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yep.
brought them in to your volume.
Yeah.
and had talent in the volume talk live to the talent who's remote but was living in the environment
Yeah.
that was on the screen.
Yep. So like mocap is a big play in that. So we've literally had virtual actors on the wall interacting with physical actors on Tampa, and they were in Japan.
Yeah.
And it was all sending everything seamlessly. So there's a way you could like mocap someone's data from New York and then shoot something in Tampa, and now you have both these actors and you cut back and forth and you can't tell the difference.
And I really can't stress enough too, like how very cutting edge this all is. Like the terminology for this entire industry literally just came out like 2 months ago. Somebody said, we got to come up with terminology. So they created a list of terminology. You know, Unreal Engine has now put out 2 handbooks that has to basically explain where this industry is going and how, and this technology is changing and evolving so fast out of these needs that, you know, you really can't underscore just how new this all is and how revolutionizing it is for our entire industry.
And I appreciate Epic and their contribution to this part of the industry, because they've made a lot of things at low price point when it comes to buying environments. They're not asking for any money back at this point on those environments unless you're using them for a game that you're selling. But in virtual production, you can do whatever you want. So that's great. They've offered free education. So if you're interested in this, there's all kinds of tutorials out there, and the Unreal Game Engine is free for anybody to download. And if you're looking for a career, I would, get in it and get with the tutorials, and don't be afraid of it, because all that stuff is out there.
Yeah.
And once you learn it, you just got to get on one set, one time, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're done. And again, bragging, but Brody's had ILM, interface with him before, and so it's just almost a wild, wild west.
And just to like humble, when they came, they like, we're in the same boat as you basically.
Yeah.
Is basically what they said. They're like, we're still figuring it out. You're actually caught up to us in many aspects and ahead in some other ways, and we're ahead in some other ways where they have more funding. But like it's stuff like that where that kind of humbles you, where it's like, oh, we're all figuring this out together.
Yeah.
There is something that Ann said too, I wanted to add to your question. When it comes to this entire process, there is another technology which is sister to virtual production called volumetric capture. And volumetric capture is kind of the newer mocap, motion capture. Instead of wearing a suit, what we do is you put a person or a prop in a volumetric capture studio. There's several cameras, as little as 8, as many as 32, in a circle, and lighting is even all the way around. And it will capture that thing or that person 360 degrees, and then you can animate it wherever you want to. Or if the person's moving in real time, you can have that person living in the game environment and moving and acting in the game environment. So that is something that Full Sail is looking very seriously at building in the next year or two, and that will interface with our virtual production studio. So we literally could have actors in volumetric capture acting, and we could skin them with a metahuman or skin them with a velociraptor skin, whatever, and they can act into the stage where our other actors will interact with them. So we're looking at a future. I don't know how many of you are Isaac Asimov fans, but I'm a huge Asimov fan. And he looked, Pebble in the Sky and the whole before the Foundation series, he envisioned a future where people went out into different worlds and lived so far apart that they would virtually have dinners together. And so they would live in these virtual environments and just share dinners and meals with each other, and it was so real to them. And if you haven't had a chance to read Asimov, you should, because it's just very dynamic, but very telling about this technology from somebody who didn't live long enough to actually experience it.
Yeah.
So, I saw another hand over here. Yes, sir, right there.
So, what would like a virtual production studio be looking for in game artists? So, like, if they're buying their hire how do they choose what production?
Well, they're buying the assets. There's a difference. So the game artists create the environments from the.
You guys bought that whole.
The Victoria Mansion, well, I would consider it an asset, but it is an environment, you're right.
Pretty much, so like a lot of the hard artwork is done by buying that.
So there's a big thing that comes with that. a lot of the time in virtual production, especially with our company View, doing a lot of commercials, we have very short deadlines. So as an environment artist, you don't have, a month to go and model out a whole environment. You have 3 days to get an environment together. So we utilize assets off the marketplace. And sometimes, maybe we're using individual meshes from these environments. Sometimes we're using demo scenes. It really depends. But a lot of the times you can literally just, take assets from one pack you get off the marketplace and combine it with another pack you get off the marketplace, and you have a whole new environment that took you, say a day to make versus a week, because you have all these assets already created for you, and all you have to do is actually put it together, make sure you light it properly, set it up so you're not tolling the computer, because as we were talking about earlier with virtual production, you only see so much of it. You don't want to create a whole world when you're only seeing a building. You're just going to create that building.
I mean, anything you can would be great. Just showing off like how diverse your skill set would be. I still think the 3D model part is important, because people still ask for custom stuff. Like I had to do custom names for every single WWE actor, and there wasn't like an easy way to do like just a font, and some of them even wanted different fonts for their names, stuff like that. So you had to hand model every single thing, but they need to know how much lead time that is for that. And if they don't have that, you have to know how to quickly create an environment based off the resources you have as easily as you can. And as well as being able to know that all you care about is what's in field of view. It doesn't matter anything else. You can make this beautiful environment that's huge, that's great, but I'm going to tear it apart on set. Like that's just going to happen. So just being aware of that, I think, is what we look for.
Yeah, I think it also has a lot to do with, say you take this environment and sorry, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. Sorry.
Sorry, I think, are you an artist?
Yeah, I'm a game artist.
You are? So I think from a buyer's perspective, I have gone to Unreal Marketplace. I think Drew or Bernie or Marcelo could tell you how that stuff gets there. CG Trader I've gone to buy environments. The only thing I find disappointing is they're not expensive, so I wonder how much of that money you're gonna walk away with. Like I bought a bedroom for $16. And then we had to redo the bed because the polygon count wasn't high enough. So that had to be forwarded to another artist. So I think, your portfolio needs to be full of things, unlike a character artist, needs to be full of things that pass off as real. Show me a piano that looks like a real piano,
Like a mixture of prop modeling as well as environment.
Yeah, just kind of showing off your knowledge of Unreal in a whole, I would say, is a great way to look at it. You don't need any specific crazy environment. It's great to have one, don't get me wrong. But if you're able to show, say, you do a 30-minute scene, but you focus completely on the lighting, and you show that you can light it properly, or you just do a single model that you mesh out, or a single model, and you just show how you modeled it out, show your UVs, show every little thing that you can do, show all those little different skill traits that you have that can come together and show that you can do this stuff on the fly.
You know what he's talking about? Okay, because I don't. Was there a question back over here, right here? Okay.
Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Going great. How are you doing?
Good. I'd love to talk. Thank you guys for doing it. My question is probably more nerdy. How close can your talent get to the screen before the parallax breaks? And also the frame rate for it to be for film.
So I'm going to jump in for some of this, but not all of it. So you don't have to worry about the parallaxing breaking when you get too close to the wall. You have to worry about moire. So for those of you that might not know what moire is, if you have too tight of a pattern on something, the cameras and their chips can't really differentiate, and it starts to kind of look like this. And so that comes into something called pixel pitch, which is the amount of distance between your pixels. So the smaller that number is, the closer you can get to your screen, right? So for us at Full Sail, we're about 8 feet. If you get closer than that, you're going to start to see the moire effect. But the parallaxing won't break. The parallaxing will go on to infinity for all that you want it to. And then I guess I'll turn it over to you guys because you've shot a lot more than us. But
Yeah, no, that's pretty much nails it.
Yeah.
Moire is like our biggest issue. Like I literally had to shoot last week where they wanted to shoot literally right up on the wall, and they liked the frame, but they're seeing moire. And I kept on, I was like, you got to scoot back. And I was like, well, we like our frame. It's like, then you have to like the moire. Like, so that's the biggest issue is moire, and I think there's potential for growth there, but pixel pitch is the way to fix that.
And sorry, the other thing that you're going to notice as you start to work on these is that all of the cameras everyone's using are large format, like bigger than full frame to help with that, because you can really manage your depth of field a lot more. And people kind of work on the longer end of lenses, 50 and higher to help with that as well. But then you run into this problem where you have this vast, beautiful background, right? But everything's kind of soft and out of focus to help with the moire. So it's like this balancing act between the tech side of the wall, the environment, and the camera person all trying to figure out where that lens can be and where that focal length can be and stuff like that too, or aperture, sorry, to figure out where that'll be so you can manage your depth of field. And that was huge on the feature. Like I had to download a new app that had the right sensor size so we could do depth of field calculations to make sure that we could get them as close to the wall as they wanted while the wall still was out of focus enough that it didn't look like a bunch of little LED bubbles.
Yeah, and Anna mentioned it before, but in virtual production, we have different phases to kind of look through this stuff. So we have a previs step where we're pulling the environment up, we're looking at our camera angles, our distance, and then tech viz to kind of really fine tune the lighting elements and all the technical aspects that are organic that we're going to add into the scene. The tighter, when we talk about pixel pitch, obviously we're talking about the pixels on the wall, right? A lot of times that's also in broadcast referred to as the camera. But we're talking about the pixels on the wall. Standard right now, between 2.6 and 2.9 is probably where a lot of studios are. But you can get as low as like 1.2, 4.
Yeah, but just keep in mind you need more computers to render that.
You need more
Your
computers
resolution
to render
gets
that.
dramatically bigger. The
And-
difference between 1 and 2 sounds small, but in a large scale wall, it's not.
Yeah, we're talking millimeters.
Yeah. And they go to like
But-
0.9 now, right?
Yeah, it makes a big difference, but your price point is going to go through the roof. You're going to pay twice as much for a 1.9 pixel pitch as you are a 2.8. So our studio was just over $3 million. You'd have to invest $6 million to get to that, and it would get us maybe 4 feet closer to the wall. We didn't see it as a value element there. But I would imagine in the future, when there's enough of these studios out, it will be a marketing element of what your pixel pitch is. The only other thing I would say, a lot of that too can be controlled in design, because when you can minimize, reflectiveness on certain materials that are created in the environment, you can cut down on some of that. But you may find that you lose some of the realism when you're doing some of those elements as well. Yes, sir.
What are the odds that we're already living in the Matrix?
If you watch TikTok, like every other video is convincing you of that. So.
100%.
I was just thinking that this mode of creating would be ideal for something like, for low budget folks, I don't know how many people here other than myself have low budget independent people, but this is kind of out of reach for a lot of us right now, I would say. However, doing something, it seems to me, if you can buy your environments and stuff, what about using this, what would you all think of like a proof of concept, or something to replace your deck? Something that gives you, without storyboarding, for example, something to show for funders when we want to go into full production, because this is where we need to save money at the beginning. And I'm wondering if anyone would have a comment.
Well, so I think you're kind of right now, because there's not a ton of studios. As the studios saturate, the price point's going to come down quite a bit and quite quickly. But I would say for the independent filmmaker, this is a huge game changer, because if you want a shot from the bottom of the Eiffel Tower, you can do that now, and you can do that down the road in the air conditioning. But the yeah, like exactly, and that opens up a lot of doors. But the thing to remember is that it changes not just that, but it changes where your money's spent. So if you wanted to do a green screen shoot, now you're paying for the studio rental anyways, the lighting, the green screen, all of your crew to be there for however many days. Plus you're paying a compositor, a rotoscoper, a CG artist anyways. Whereas now, all of that's done on the front end, and you are, we call it pixel what? Final pixel. What you see is what you get, right? So what comes out of the camera, there's nothing more to do than edit. It's just a straight cut. You're not doing all of this rotoscoping and all of these very, very pricey things in post. And it really can, I know right now the studio spaces aren't super affordable, but that's going to change. And the savings from not having to do all that post work and just having to do a little extra time in pre-pro is going to just, it's going to save you money, and it's just going to kind of maybe shift how you spend that money.
And I am going to jump on a soapbox here just for a second, and Kyle and Marcel will probably kill me for this, but
Oh man.
I am very much supportive of Florida regaining its name in the film industry. And I think virtual production might very well be our way to do that. So Full Sail will entertain any idea for a script to be virtual. There are caveats to that, of course. We want our students to be able to work on it. If you have budget to hire, we'd like you to hire at least a few of our grads to work on it. And we want our student artists to help you with your environments, whether it's creating them or prepping them up for virtual production, which is what we did on this last production. And I will say, in that production is a bit of drama. She had 1.5 million to produce this movie, and things happened. Sponsor backed out. She ended up with $500,000, and if it wasn't for virtual, she would have never been able to make the movie. We supported that with crew. We supported it with our studio, with camera, lighting, all the things that are big money items, just for the trade-off of being able to put Full Sail's name on it, being able to claim it as 100% virtual. I don't know if we have to do that anymore. And being able to let our students have that experience, because when they graduate, they can put single line credit, I worked on 9 windows, as this. And so I definitely welcome sitting down with any filmmaker in the Florida region and saying, let's see what you got and see what we can do to help you with that. Because I think it's important. It's a win-win for our students, and it's a win-win for you, and a win for the Florida film industry. Sorry, you guys. Jen, you had a question, and then we're going to go back up there.
Oh, I just had a real world kind of story based on that. Wes Ball, he is he's the director of The Maze Runner, the new Planet of the Apes movie. He's supposed to do Mouse Guard for Fox, where they got bought out by Disney. But he made a short film completely out of Unreal Engine. He didn't have the money to make his own, and 100% he got his job directing Maze Runner based on that Unreal Engine short film. You can find it on YouTube, just look, West Ball short film, and it was 100% on Unreal Engine, 100% free, and it's a brilliant short film. They gave him a feature.
Is it Wes or West?
Wes, W-E-S, Ball, B-A-L-L.
And this will be our last question, because we're almost out of time, right there.
So you guys have obviously had to jump through an insane amount of hoops to get this pipeline up and running, kind of from the ground up. And I'm curious if you guys brought any philosophies to that initial stage of like how to not be super frustrated and when you're super teeth into right away, or any advice for small teams that are trying to figure out their own pipelines.
I'll just say one word: education. We are, right now, from our experience, we are developing a director's manual, a virtual continuity manual, just things that industry players really could utilize. And if they would just go through it with us, it would make our world so much easier, right? Anything else you want to add?
I mean, I agree. I feel like half my job is teaching people, which feels weird because I've worked with some very talented people with way more experience than me, and it feels very weird to like have to teach them my world. But the thing with that is like I think people get very frustrated when they don't understand, and just having that mindset of like they're only frustrated because they don't understand, and knowing that and just trying to get to the same page, because at the end of the day, you're all working on the same project. You're all trying to collaborate something, and there's no use in cutting each other's throats. There's no like toes to be stepped on. You just, at the end of the day, you want the same project, and this is the main mindset I try to go into everything. So
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I think the thing that carried us through and got us through this like crazy hectic schedule and everything was the ability to be open-minded and to listen. And when you did get frustrated, to listen to someone like Marcella that's like, hey, I can fix this. Like, let's not focus on that. We can divert our attention over here. And I think that the teamwork and the ability to lean on each other for the things you don't know and the things you have to learn together, and to educate the people that might not know as much as you. But, you know, if you're talking to a DP that's been shooting for 30 years and he's on this new space, that can be a little intimidating. It can be rough because you're talking to someone who in theory should know more than you, but they have to understand that they don't know everything. And that can be a tricky road to walk. But I think as long as you have the attitude of, I'm here to learn something, I'm here to teach something, and we're all going to be better for it, you'll be in a good place.
All right. Well, let's thank our panelists one more time. Thank you so much for being here. Again, the movie we talked about is Nine Windows, so if you get a chance, that should be out in the fall, I would think. It stars William Forsythe and Michael Paré, and so look for that. And then I am serious about what I said, so if you are a filmmaker and you have something you think might work as virtual, let's sit down and talk about it. All right? All right, thank you so much.